Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy New Year. A very warm welcome to one and all. This is the first London Ballet Circle in Conversation of 2024, and we're starting off the new year with one of the world's most astounding ballerinas, Alina Cojocaru. We couldn't be more thrilled to have her with us here tonight. I doubt there's a ballet lover anywhere in this world who has not been absolutely mesmerized by her dancing, whether in person or on video. And now here she's with us tonight. It's been 3 years since Alina last spoke to the LBC, and in that time she has been one very, very busy woman. Coming up at the end of this month, Alina's new ballet, La Strada, will have its premiere at Sadler's Wells here in London, and we're all looking forward to it. And tonight, amongst other things, we're going to hear all about this highly anticipated and exciting new production. For the first time, I'm also delighted to welcome our interviewer, Daniel Pratt. Daniel is from Lewisham, which is very local, and he graduated from Central School of Ballet, which most of us are very well aware of. What a great school it is. And now Daniel is a first soloist with Sarasota Ballet. In addition to his dancing, many of you will know him from his articles for Bach Talk, Seeing Dance, and the much-missed Dancing Times. Alina, Daniel, it's a pleasure to have you both here. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Suzanne, for the invitation.
If you have questions for Alina, please feel free to type them into the chat box, which is at the bottom of your screen. I know that there is a small piece of film, or there's some trailers that Alina has provided that we can show. We're not exactly sure where she would like them inserted, so just let us know and we can do that through the conversation. I think that's all I have to say. Please sit back now and enjoy Alina Cojocaru and Daniel Pratt in what's bound to be a very interesting conversation.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much, Susan. That's I'm hoping it will be a very interesting chat. Well, it is a real privilege for me to be able to welcome Alina to this chat this evening. As Susan said, Alina needs no introduction. I'm sure we've all sat in audiences and been absolutely swept away by your performances. So I think I'm going to start sort of right at the beginning and ask you, because it's always really great to hear it straight from the artist's mouth, if you could just tell us a little bit about what sparked your dance journey. So right at the beginning of your career up to now. I know that's sort of a very wide space of time. But
It is indeed. I think I started actually in Romania doing gymnastics. I think I was 7, 8 years old. In Romania at the time, it was a sport that was very much done by schools, in many different schools. Then I stopped gymnastics, and we had a wonderful friend in our family that said, you have too much energy to jump around sofas, you have to do something with it. And then he said something I'll never forget: you should do ballet, it's easier than gymnastics. I'm not sure I agree with that, but I definitely am happy that he suggested that that direction for me, because I did follow his advice and I started to do ballet in Romania. I never had seen a ballet until then, so I didn't quite know what was heading towards, but I loved the fact that the teacher was saying good, and it gave me some kind of excitement that there was some dancing things around. So my parents decided that I should continue, and I auditioned for the Romanian Ballet School. To my luck, I guess it was the only time when there was an exchange of students between Kyiv and Romania, and there were 9 of us that were chosen to go on a scholarship to train in Kyiv. I was 9 years old at the time. I still have not seen a full-length ballet, and I found myself in Kyiv. And I think I can say that up until then, it was just following the waves, following where life was taking. It was a huge decision for my parents to let me go. I think, especially for my mom at such a young age, at times where communication was not as easy as now. Communication meant letters, meant phone calls on landline, meant visiting once a year. So it was a completely different world. But I happened to fall in love with this profession, really, and I'm grateful for my teachers. I did end up seeing my first ballet, which was Don Q, and the very ballet that only 7 years later I danced it on that very stage. So it was I must say that especially when my first teacher ever, she was so passionate. I think the word is passionate, caring and passionate and dedicated, and it kind of made me have the same approach for what I do. She was on her knees correcting us. She was working her lunch breaks to get us to a certain level, and it really inspired me to appreciate and love this profession.
I think it's so interesting. Oh, sorry, I've cut in. I was just going to say it's so interesting for me to hear that you didn't see many ballets growing up. So really, it was the work, the time in the studio, the time working on your body. So, and that's something that I feel has carried from the conversations we've had. I feel like that work has really carried you through your whole career.
I didn't think of that before, but it's true. I guess one really has to fall in love with that part, that aspect, because it's such a big part of our life, really, being in a studio. True. I didn't think of that, because even now I absolutely enjoy rehearsals, and I can't choose whether I enjoy more rehearsals or shows because they're so different. But I do definitely get excited about getting into a studio to work on something new, something not necessarily new, just to be in a studio and grow and develop and discover.
So am I right to think you trained in London on a Prix de Lausanne scholarship? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
So how was the difference between training in London at the Royal Ballet School and the training that you received in Kyiv?
So what was really interesting for me is the world outside was very different. London to Kyiv, they're very completely different cities and the way of living and schedule. But in the studio, it's the same. In the studio, it's the same routine, it's the same pattern, it's the same bar warm up. And at that time, there were actually 3 of my teachers who were Russian, Russian speaking, Russian training. So while in the studio, the world was the same for me. Going outside, I had to learn, adapt, learn English, which I always loved. I love languages, so for me it was very, I love very much learning different languages, so I enjoyed that part very much. But once in a studio, it was the same. And I guess it's why it's interesting about our profession, because no matter where we're in the world, once you're in the studio, you know what to do. And everybody knows what is happening. So it wasn't such a big change. The other big change was, of course, that there were a lot more foreigners, foreign dancers around me, foreign language, I made friends from different countries. I remember hearing different languages speaking around me. I would see different trainings. There were some dancers there were some students that had a completely different training. I remember staying in a studio trying to do more turns with some of my colleagues that were just turning so well. And it was a wonderful memory. I have wonderful memories from my time in school, even though it was very short. I was only there for 6 months. But I have good memories. Yes.
Pretty amazing. 6 months, and then you were back in Kyiv, right, for a short time as a principal there.
Correct. Yes. I was. There was a teacher in the theater that she said to me, listen, you can be a principal, I can work with you on principal roles, please come and join the company. She said that to me when I left on a scholarship, when I went back to the Royal. And I kind of wanted to take her offer. So I mentioned to the school that I would like to do this. I feel is the right thing. I would love to. And I remember Sir Anthony Dowell calling me in and saying, you know what, we're going to offer you a contract here in the Royal Ballet. Please stay. And I remember a whole day walking around city thinking what to do, what to decide. And it was rather interesting because one of the people around me that was advising, she said a comment like, why would you want to be in a big fish in a small pond where you can be a small fish in a big pond? And I realized I don't want to be none of those. I feel I could be, I feel that the pond doesn't have to have any limits. And so a little fish can grow big in any pond, you know. It felt like I didn't feel that could be a definition of our world. I think if I'm in a pond where I can grow and learn, maybe I can jump from one pond to another, but I felt for me to continue growing, I wanted to go back to Kiev to work with my teacher. And I think very much was a good decision. We had wonderful work for 1 year with Larissa, with Lagada Alavich Savna, we worked with her. It is, again, this is something very different than working with other companies in the world. You have one teacher that works with you the entire day through all the ballets you're working on. So you get to develop a relationship, an understanding of how you work and how she can help me. And I felt in great hands. Within 1 year, I did, oh my gosh, I did, first it was Don Q, I was 16, I did Kitri. Then Sleeping Beauty, Nutcracker, Coppelia, the world premiere of a new Coppelia, Cinderella. There were so many premieres and performances and tours. And I remember vividly being so excited about the year after. So we were talking to my teacher and I said, so what's next year? And she said, it's kind of the same. And I was like, oh. So then it's funny. I knew straight away that to do the same next year was not something that was pulling me towards. And we spoke very honestly. And she said straight away, I knew you'll leave. I just didn't thought it would be so soon. And then she said, if there's anywhere I would open-heartedly let you go, it would be the Royal Ballet. And then I said, well, having been with the Royal Ballet School, it was at the time where the theater was, yes, the theater was restored and they renovated, and then the company was working in the same building as the school. So throughout that half a year, I saw the company working on Manon, on Ashton. I was like, wow, that's so beautiful. So right. I also felt that pull to go to the Royal Ballet, and that is actually exactly what I did. I applied to come to audition, and end up being with the company starting in the Coeur de Ballet once again.
That's what I find so interesting about your story, and I think that's a testament to the kind of artist that you are. That you went from being a principal in Kiev to then starting right back again in the Coeur de Ballet, and that must have been a very interesting shift. But I'm sure it taught you an incredible amount. So I'm interested to hear a little bit about that time of sort of entering Covent Garden and sort of being in the Coeur de Ballet, and then how you kind of progressed through the ranks to become a principal there.
I never found anything more stressful than being in a Coeur de Ballet. because if I mess up a solo, I pay for it. But if you mess up, if you do something wrong in the corps de ballet, not only that everybody else sees it, but then it's the entire group of us on stage suffers by one mistake that I can make. So I found it from that point of view incredibly lots of pressure, because suddenly I like to consider myself a team player. I like to be a part of a team, and somehow the responsibility and the desire to do well was I didn't find it easy, especially because I was one of the on the smaller size, so I would be at the front, which means if I would be wrong, if someone would say to the right, to the left, and you're just kind of standing there trying to move wherever. And having not had the experience, you just jump in and you have to learn ballet after ballet, and there wasn't much time to get into the understanding of the system and how to be everything as should be. So in the beginning, I found it. I don't think at that time I had time to realize and think, because there's so much material to learn. So I was constantly watching videos, learning the steps. But I was definitely so much happier doing solo, and not because I was doing solo, but because there was so much discretion. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely actually agree with that. It's so much, there is such a responsibility dancing in a corps de ballet, because you've got all of your colleagues around you, and you're relying on each other to keep the standard high. So
yes. And then it was just one day I was asked to go into a studio to join a rehearsal, and I went into the studio expecting, as always, to see a group of us in a studio learning something, and there was just Wendy Ellis and Bruce Sampson, and I said, okay, come in, and I was just looking around and expecting someone else to join, and they started teaching me Symphonic Variations, and they say this ballet would like you to learn, and the show is next week, but there is no pressure. You see how much you can learn. And I don't know how much time we had, but we learned half the ballet. It is about around just over 20 minutes when we're always on stage. And after we learned the ballet, at the end of the rehearsal, half the ballet, at the end of the rehearsal, I was told, so tomorrow is the stage call, but you can do until here. And after this, you can stop. So I said, oh, okay. I took the VHS video. I went home, plug it in, and just learn and learn and learn and learn. And the next day when the rehearsal started on stage, I did everything we learned. And then I hear over the tenor and the microphone, okay, Alina, you can stop now. And I continued until the ballet finished. And I guess then everybody felt, okay, it seems it's okay to do the premiere next week, which was like in about Sunday, and then Monday, Tuesday, and then the show, something like that. And I guess everything I've experienced in Kyiv had helped me perform without nerves, and also on a younger age, I definitely did not analyze things so much. I went more for the excitement of doing things. And when there isn't time, you just do everything you can, the best you can, and more raw and naive. And of course, we had time to then, Wendy was wonderful to explain how the ballet was made, the reason of it, the story behind what's happening on stage. So I had the artistic part as well, so I could play with and integrate. And I think that was the beginning shift for my how I could be seen in the future in a company with that little achievement. Then I would go home. I would put the video on. I would put weights on my feet, and I would do the ballet 2-3 times in a row, again and again. So then I made sure that I have the stamina for when I have to do it once.
Right.
I guess that is what I thought at that time would help me. That was the knowledge I had about build up strength and stamina to just put weights on a feet and go through it twice. I guess it was the same here. If you can do it times in the studio, you can do it once on stage. And I wanted to add the weights too, so I make sure I can do it once on stage. Sorry. So that was my Symphonic Variations experience.
I mean, that's what an amazing. I feel like I've got so many questions just about that one episode because Symphonic is such an iconic ballet. Anyway, I mean, was that your first Ashton ballet or not? Had you danced other Ashton works?
I don't remember. Probably would have done something, but not at the soloist level, because it was, I would have been in the company for a year and a bit. So yes, I definitely would have done some Ashton by then.
What a special role, though, to kind of, like you said, it sort of sets you on a trajectory within the company because it is so special to the Royal Ballet's identity. So I'm interested after. I mean, I know I'm conscious that we've got. I want to keep hearing about your time at the Royal Ballet, but you've done so much as well after that. So I wonder if we can maybe move on a little bit to the move to English National Ballet and how that was. That's such an interesting story to hear too about the differences between these two London-based companies. Obviously, English National Ballet tours perhaps more than the Royal Ballet, but I'd love to hear your experience and your impression of the differences between the two places.
For me, what was really interesting was the fact that as I was going to English National Ballet my first day into the company, I actually didn't know many dancers. I can say almost no, I didn't know almost any dancers. And for a second, I felt, wow, we're not that far from each other, and I never had a chance to watch them perform. I think maybe 1 or 2 performances in my entire 8 years in London, and so it really felt like something new, completely new. If you ask me to go into any other companies in the world, any, Munich, Berlin, Russia, Ukraine, South Africa, everyone I would go, there's someone I know. And entering ENB, I actually didn't know. But and there is something very special about English National Ballet is the dancers. There is such a wonderful, wonderful energy between the dancers during my time there. At least that's I can speak of. It was. I was just saying, I have no idea the preference in dancers, who's friends, who's not friends, because when you're in a studio, there was only one focus, to get what we're doing the best that we can. It was such a, I guess what I like to say, such a respect for each other's work and such a support for each other as well, because we depended so much on, if we get better, everybody gets better. And I enjoyed that very much. I really felt that so much. And for me, when I left Royal Ballet, it was a wonderful, I mean, I would say the perfect setup for me, because I would be half my time with Hamburg Ballet and half my time with English National Ballet. And I felt I would gain the best of this ballet world through working with John, learning from John Neumeier, and everything that he has to teach and choreograph. And then with English National Ballet, I would have a classical base of performances with Nutcracker, Swan Lake, and as the repertoire evolved, so I felt it could not get any better. Of course, the traveling was not always easy, and when you have 2 companies doing Nutcracker in both places, but at least I had variety, and it definitely was a very let's say my fish kept growing because I was in 2 ponds at the same time. and also what was interesting is, yes, of course, at that time we're working with in Jay's News, and there were 2 studios which had such beautiful energy. No, they're not the biggest. No, you probably couldn't do a manège in one of them. You kind of had to turn around in a more challenging ways. But the energy, the history, you could feel it, see it, and I love that very much. I love to enter in a studio and feel that history, and it inspires, and you feel a part of it too somehow. So, and interesting enough, here in Hamburg as well, the setup is that we work in the studio, then we go and perform in a theater. So it's funny how I enjoyed this kind of setup to work.
Can I ask a little bit about Hamburg and John Neumeier? I know that's, again, a very important part of your life, and the relationship that you have with John Neumeier is so interesting. So could you tell me a little bit about, when did you first come across John Neumeier? Was it through his ballets, or did you meet him in person? How did that relationship blossom?
John invited me to join his gala in Nijinsky Gala, which he has at the end of every season. And before that, I have a feeling he had seen performances in London. He travels quite a bit, and somehow I could never fit in any big projects he was inviting me. And then I came and danced in one of the Nijinsky Gala, and after that he invited me to do, no, actually, no, he kept inviting me, but I couldn't make it work. And it was towards 2009 or 2010, where I realized that perhaps if it is to work with him, I have to do something about it too. And I was like, well, what can I do? Because, you know, after people ask you for a while, they stop, because obviously you can't make it. I couldn't make it with my work with the Royal Ballet, so I couldn't find that gap. And I felt that this is something important. It was a calling. And then someone said, well, see which other companies do his repertoire. And I was like, that's a brilliant idea. So I went Googling. And of course was Royal Danish Ballet, who was doing lots of John's work. And they were doing Midsummer Night's Dreams. And then Johan said, oh, there's lots of roles in that ballet that you would enjoy doing. And I was like, oh, really? So I just said, I contacted John and I said, would you consider working with me maybe in another theater if they're interested to invite me? And then he spoke with Nikolai, who was director in the at that time as well. And they say, yes, let's make it happen. And I went, and I learned. I was there for 5 weeks. I learned the ballet. He was not there yet, was the people staging it. Then I was in London doing some performances. And then I was flying in the morning for my first stage call. But I was late, and I went on stage kind of halfway through, after prologue, halfway through Act 1. Already put the makeup, with everything, went on stage from the airport, and that was it. I could hear his comment on them, yes, and it was such an engagement straight away. And he said, oh, Alina, you're there, and then afterwards we rehearsed for the entire afternoon for notes, corrections, the things I didn't get to do on stage, and I just fell in love. I just fell in love with what I was receiving, the information, the details, the passion for emotions, respond, connect, communicate, which are all the things I've been drawn to in performing. And after that, the season after, John invited me to do Midsummer Night's Dreams with his company. And I remember it was at the end of the performances when I was supposed to leave at around 11 p.m. I received a phone call, and he was asking whether I would be interested to be a part of his new creation on Lilium. And interestingly enough, I know Lilium because Johan mentioned it to me. He said it's such a beautiful musical. And I remember a whole Christmas searching for the Lilium, the film with the musical, and I couldn't find it, so I was going to different places to buy it, and I finally found it. And I remember sitting with Johan, and crying when it comes to the main under the tree and the bench. So when John mentioned Lilium, I was like, oh my gosh, I know that story. And he was starting to tell me the story. And I just want to say, I know it, I'm in. But of course, I let him say what he wanted. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much bigger than what I imagined it to be. And then I just had the challenge to go back and find within our schedule with the Royal Ballet how can we make it happen. And luckily enough, we could make it happen, so we did make it happen. And in 2011 was the premiere of it. But actually, listen, what's interesting, because in the preparation for that ballet, John said, "Watch this film for inspiration." Guess what film it was? It was La Strada.
I have a suspicion.
It was La Strada. Oh my gosh. So that is the first time I came across La Strada film. And I remember watching it, and it helped a lot because I was really struggling to accept that a woman would be hurt and hit and accept it, or not accept it, but not change anything about the situation. So it's interesting to go deeper in us as humans, I guess, and see there is the faith, our skin, our heart, our souls, and something bigger, deeper inside that goes infinite. And it was about how love can break all of this, and then you become, it sounds very strange, you become one with the universe. So once you've experienced that love, and you know that love is there, and the hurt is not really hurt, you don't feel it. But also what is most interesting is we see it in a film, we see it in a play, while Lilium hits her, the body does it, but the words are saying, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, I'm not, and then he hits her. So to understand this impulse as humans that we sometimes have, that we do, it's a conditioning of emotions and response. When the inner love inside says something else. And I think I personally struggle with this kind of thing on a daily basis in a smaller scale, you know? It's not something, and once I've connected with that, with my Lilium, not only did I accept it, but I could honestly feel that, of course, you're not gonna really slap me, but but I didn't feel that in that pain, because I was not looking at what he was doing. I was listening to what he was thinking and saying. And it was a very interesting discovery, I guess, to us as humans as well, you know, and for me too, to go deeper than the outside layer.
It's making me think about the things that we've discussed about La Strada, and I think maybe this is a really good moment to turn our attention to this production that you'll be performing at the end of January, because what you just said about Lilium reminds me of a quote that you told me about for La Strada. I'm going to paraphrase. I'm sure, Alina, you'll be able to correct me. But it was something that basically said, you know, we see what people do, we hear what they say, but if we felt what they felt, or if we could hear their thoughts, how different our world would be. And I think that really encapsulates what you're trying to do with La Strada. I know there's a lot to talk about with this production. It's your first full-length commission. I know you've commissioned dance pieces before, but this is your first sort of evening-length work. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about how the process has been, because you're dancing one of the main roles in this production too, aren't you?
Yes, I'll be performing the role of Gelsomina. We have Mixeni from a former dancer from principal dancer from La Scala, who's doing Zampano, and we're gonna have Il Mato, who's gonna be danced by Johan Coburg, and we're gonna have also a group of six dancers joining us. It's been a really fascinating journey for me to get things together, and I'm not going to go into all the details because we don't have the time to go into all the details. But what was really, really, really wonderful, and I probably keep repeating myself, is discovering Natalia Horečna, who is our choreographer, and an amazing human being who she is so kind and so supportive and generous with her thoughts, her energy, her advice, her vision. Because I like to put a lot of thoughts into what I do, but when I'm in a studio and I realize I was thinking this and it can be this, I go, wow. And I loved finding myself in that position because, my gosh, I didn't think of this, of course. And then you go, how can she see it? It's phenomenal. So then you work with a different awareness when you work with people who you learn from so much, and who so generously and freely and open and unforced. I would say it is unforced, it's not set, it's a live discovery of work, and then it has a shape and a form and a movement and a dance, but it's driven by emotions and reasons and purpose. And for me, that's exactly what I love about the art form. So yes. Sorry, I kind of lost track of thoughts there.
How was Natalia? You mentioned that Natalia was such a kind, generous, open person. So you felt very free to kind of explore in the studio. Is that you kind of felt free to really push the limits? And so how has that been different? Has that been very different from working with other choreographers, or?
I think I don't know. I wouldn't know how to compare, because with every choreographer has a different way of working. Someone comes and tells you what they want from you with already an idea. Some of the choreographers like to explore in a studio and change things to get you to where it should go. Someone gives feedback and then you have the freedom, and then and it's always kind of that really direction, and then you discover, and then you grow from there. Grow from words to find the physicality of how to do it, find the story. But it was done in such nothing is wrong.
Right.
And while I knew that sometimes you might do something the choreographers say and it goes wrong and they like it. And then they prefer, okay, let's do like this because there was something in the movement or in the going wrong that I liked, and it created something unusual. So I do like to just go for it. Even if I fall down, I'll rather push beyond, so I give more, and then we find where is the limit. And somehow with her was even more than usual. This, nothing is wrong. And if today the body is tired, let's work with it with what we have. And then you have too much energy, let's see what happens with too much energy. And then if you have, it seemed like every day I would go in a studio and I would be able to say, oh, how do I feel today? Yeah, let's work with this today. And it was very much like this on a daily basis. And I loved that because it did really encourage me to tune in to how I felt.
Right.
Instead of thinking, oh, I have to do this step and I have to do this story and I have to do this and I have to put this emotion on. I was like, oh, I know the story, I know the steps. How do I show up today? How do I perform this today? And and it seemed there was not right or wrong. And what that did, it added layer and over layer of what's possible within my work on this ballet. And it becomes deeper in this way, because you don't just aim for one thing. It just kind of, from different places, the bubble gets like a snowball that gets bigger and bigger and bigger with each day. So I guess, I hope that kind of explains what I really loved about working in that time.
No, it definitely does. My mind was just turning to Gelsomina as a character, because she's quite she's sort of so unique, particularly when we think about the world today. She's so unconsciously good and non-judgmental, and that must have been quite interesting for you, because in some ways you seem very natural in that sort of mode. But how did that feel to sort of get into this mind frame of this character?
Well, first of all, it's if you watch for whomever has seen the film, it's just such an iconic look, and of course one has. I wanted, and I would like to keep on searching to find something original. So my first question was, so what is it special about her? What characteristics she has? And I would just write down for myself. So it's naive, curious, childlike, dreamer, quick to forgive. Not my forte, sorry. No. So they're all this. No, forgive, yes, forget, not so much. So it was just, I was trying to build her with these words, what I like about, what I think she's like, based on the film, based on the research I did, based on, and then knowing all those emotions, I didn't have to physically become like Gelsomina that we see in the film, but try to more like bring those attributes and that way of being within myself, within my body, within my physicality, and within the way I work. And with Natalia's guidance, of course, it kind of was so natural, because we were aiming for the same thing. And I know I said probably the word original would be a good way word to use, but the truth is, I feel I'm still discovering, and we go a little bit beyond the film. We have some other things, other worlds to explore. We also try to explore not only the physical, but also the spiritual part, the emotion part, and this is why we do have two angels, two beings in the ballet to help reach that dimension that perhaps is not seen, and I really love it, because what this did to me, at first I thought these angels are the angels waiting to take me when I die, but then the more we worked, I felt they are there to support, and maybe to some people could be a religious support, to other people could be, and then most recently I realized they could easily be an extension of myself that I'm not aware of.
Right.
Exactly. Is that inner strength that sometimes when we go to really challenging times in our life, and it could be prayer, it could be hope, it could be whatever people need to get them out of there, but at the end of the day, that channels through our own strength, and we all have it within us. And then, or it could be a part, like I said, it could be a part of ourselves, could be a part of the spiritual world, it could be, and I love that, because I think if for me it has so many meanings, perhaps when people watch can see what that means for them, that kind of connection. So I'm actually really curious to see what people make of it,
That's the wonderful thing about our art form, isn't it? That we, as dancers, we can have one perception, but it's for every single person who's watching it to make their own decisions. And that's really special. maybe now's a good moment. I know we've got a trailer to watch or some footage
Okay.
from
Yeah.
Strada. So perhaps now, if our wonderful technical team can cue it up, that would be great. Looks awesome. I mean,
It's happening. Sorry.
I know it's not very long, is it? Because the dates are the 25th and to the 28th of January. So, and of course, I'm sort of doing a shameless plug for you, but you can buy tickets through Sadlerswell's website. Probably at some point we should put a link in the chat just so people, if you've been listening and you enjoyed what you're hearing about La Strada, you can see it for yourselves. But it was odd because I was watching that video and it was wonderful, but I started to think about another question I had, which was about you being a mother, probably. Because how has that sort of, when we were talking about one of the characters in La Strada, I think we discussed that he's just, even though now he's quite a brutish man, essentially he's just this innocent child wanting love. And so I'm interested to sort of open up the discussion, not only about this character, but how being a mother has affected your dance career, how you juggle the two. Quite a big topic to sort of branch into, but if you're happy to talk about that, it'd be great.
I feel, I think the biggest challenge really is the beautiful part and the challenging part is that children are growing so fast and they're changing so fast. So just when I think, oh, I figured this out, they go to the next stage and I'm like kind of catching up. Oh, we're doing this now. And just when I think, okay, now I know how to deal with this, they go further. And it's a constant feeling that, and then I realize I will never feel like I have it. I will never feel like I figure out what to do, but it's more like I learn as I go. So once I've adopted I've accepted the fact that I would never feel in control of it. I realized, okay, then it's great because I was more in the moment. I was more feeling what is needed the day, what is needed in the week, much more than saying, I know what I'm doing, this is what we're doing, because they change so fast. And not only that, but they, with Chulpi, with my first girl, was, I would like to say, way easier because it was one child. And while it was more challenging because it was my first child and I had so much to learn and experience, when I had two children which needed different things, and to be able to feel like I am giving them what they need, it is a never-ending process of this kind of give and learn. And I think in our profession, it forces us to we have to be in control now. We have to work every day, do all the work we need to on stage. We know what we're doing. We can if things don't work, we can straight away somehow react and make it work organically so it doesn't look like a mistake. We're in tune with our bodies and in control what we do. While when you have children, that goes out the window completely. And I go like, what is happening? Yesterday everything was fine, and now 2 hours later it's not. And so, but that's the beauty of it, really. It keeps you on my toes. And what is really, really wonderful is to see children, to be with children, to learn from children. Because the biggest lesson I find my girls are teaching me is presence. I think I could even sometimes fake my way on stage. I hate to admit it. It's not okay. I don't want to say fake my way on stage because I don't really fake, but I have an experience I can rely on. Let's say if there's a day where it's really hard to perform, I have in my baggage of experiencing that role so much that I don't have to force to learn to bring something new. Again, I could just relax and rely on the experience I have. While with children, you don't have that safety net. you don't have anything to rely on, because something that worked yesterday, suddenly today they already need something else, and they move so fast in their development that it requires me to be more present and more present. And now they're at age that they constantly want to show me things, and then if I don't look while they're doing it, it becomes but really what is so wonderful is to see that curiosity about life, trust in life, fearless, unless they see something that become scary or upsetting to them, and I became more efficient with my time, because suddenly the time is a lot more limited for my work, my preparation, and I love being a mom. I love very much being a mom, and I see it as a great responsibility and a great joy, a great joy, and yes, I don't know if it's any specific questions you have. I think also what I realized, because I want everything to work, my dancing, the girls, the house, the food. I'm passionate about healthy eating. I'm passionate. I know how important that is. The education, the reading, so there's lots of aspects of life that I feel I want to keep up. And when I was trying to do that, I was failing at everything because I couldn't. So I was trying. I of course trying to read things that inspire me. So I kind of realized that all I can do is take two at a time, then come pick this one up, then come and kind of keep them growing, but not all at the same time, just checking in that they're all moving forward. And once I realized that, it kind of it felt easier, because I can say, okay, now we have 3 more weeks towards La Strada, and I even tell the girls, mommy and daddy are doing this, and it's really important and big. And after that, we're gonna have a break, so we're gonna really do what you wanna do. We're gonna have some time off. So somehow having this conversation, it's not, at times there's guilt. I can say sometimes it's guilt that I feel I'm neglecting, but I realize that it shouldn't be, because we could involve them. They were also in Orsolina, the clip you saw. It was in Orsolina, so the girls were also there. They saw some of the rehearsals. They were on stage on studio with us. They were around us, with us. And now we can say, okay, that's already coming to stage. So involving them in conversation and communication made me, and they say, okay, mommy, and so they understand.
Yeah.
But if I just say, okay, bye, mommy goes to work, see you tomorrow or see you tonight, they don't understand. So once I realized that instead of just trying to cut it short, I actually communicated with them what's happening. And sometimes they'll make the most interesting comments about things. And you go, wow, they actually do listen to what I say. They actually do take it in, they do remember. And then it helped me to realize how important is my communication with them. Not just I love you, I hug you, but sharing what I do and why I do it. Or and it's so funny, because once I didn't know, I dropped something on my foot, and my foot got a little bruised. And they love to walk on my feet. They're on my feet and we walk. And I would say, Ella, that foot is our, let's do on the other foot. So every time we'll come home, she'll jump on me, she'll look down and say, oh, mommy, which one is our? And then she'll jump on the other one, and then we're just gonna go play on the foot that didn't have a bruise. And they remember, they're such they're so kind souls. And I do learn from them for my role, Jasmina. I don't, it's wonderful to see it. So, or even when they're upset about something, and then within seconds, they move on, like, no, like a minute, they just go do something completely happy. And I go, it's interesting how now the older we get, the more we tend to talk or to hold about the things that upset us, while children are much more able to move on to happier things to do.
It's so interesting hearing you talk, and it's quite humbling as a dancer. You kind of listen and you hear that all of the things you're talking about your children are things that can help us in our careers, actually, to be curious, to be it's so interesting to hear how life with your children has sort of it's directly informing your art now.
Yeah, it really is.
I'm just thinking too about I can see we've got some questions in the chat, so I will get to those. But my one sort of last question is related to the pandemic, maybe not such a happy topic, but I know you were thinking about the Strada right before COVID-19 happened. Is that right?
It was actually more like during.
During.
It
So
was
how was
during.
your experience during COVID and sort of post COVID, trying to sort of as we were all trying to re-enter this new world after the pandemic? How was that for you?
You know, in the beginning it was heaven, because I mean, when did we ever in our lives had could just do nothing and not worry? Because even when you don't perform or you're injured or you feel you're missing something, but in this case I wasn't missing anything because no one else was working, so it felt like, oh, I could actually enjoy this. And there wasn't even a holiday, so I had the day back to start rehearsing, so it was such an open holiday. And the first summer was actually really nice weather, so I felt I sorry, I honestly did feel somehow quite happy. And it was very interesting how as the time moved on, that transformed into uncertainty. One could say a bit of concerns, fear, and then later on it became into a uh, part frustration, I think, part you just didn't see an end to it, and it raised so many questions about me as an artist, because of course we're living in a times where we I could not bring to 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 the world, to the what I am, who I am, and I had to go again deeper more into who I am as Alina, not necessarily the dancer. Luckily, while I can honestly say I had more performances during pandemic for Chulke than I've ever had on stage for many audiences, because we would just every night play, dance, and do all the funny faces performances and dressing up um, and actually the biggest change after the pandemic was for Chulpe to realize that we actually work, because for what was it, almost 2 years we were not having that routine. And then she said, but where are you going? And we couldn't take them into studio yet in the beginning because it was as little people as possible. So I couldn't say, well, actually, I'm doing what I did before, but you were too little to remember. So there were quite big transitions. And it really was at that time, because my biggest passion really is somehow to put forward what I've learned, to pass on what I've learned. But from my experience, I've had great teachers that were so good at it, and I had teachers that I could not connect with and understand. The way they were talking, the way what they were saying, I would not really necessarily agree. And I felt that I didn't want to be that teacher. I didn't want it to be that coach. I didn't want it to uh, but I guess during pandemic, it was the time when I realized, but I could be the other one to some, even if not to many, to all, but could to some of the artists, I could be of some kind of help, advice, inspiration, or mentor. So it really led to how can I create an environment that is maybe small, but could bring joy and creativity and laughter and a freedom, in a sense of freedom of performing who we are. And I think this is what I'm most passionate about La Strada, because we have that group of people, and we are who we are. Then we'll separate, and when we tour with it, we're gonna get together. So it is in a way like a small company, and perhaps I'm testing myself within this kind of environment and how I can be. And there are moments where, of course, there are crises and challenges and things that come along, and it's just interesting to see how I respond to it. And it's interesting for me to learn what triggers me to be fearful of things and what makes me excited. Because once I work on something that makes me excited, I just feel so full. And while there are other things I don't know so much about or it's uncertain, I get small and more okay. And it's learning. It's having the knowledge about things, and there's so much about this venture that I'm learning about. Uh, Luckily, I like to learn things, but in the same time, I guess now the biggest challenge is when I realize how little time we have and see how much more still needs done, then I have to really um, um, my goal is to get as much done for the production wise. So once I get in the studio, I can really just relax and lose myself in my work. But the pandemic had opened many questions again. There were lots of questions that I stopped asking, and then I was like about the future, about, and then of course we had Ella, so that was kind of the biggest achievement of the pandemic was to have our little Ella with us, and she's the light. I call her my little light. Shulti is my star, and Ella is my light. So they're both shining very bright in my life.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a wonderful, I think all of us are sort of, our hearts are like full after hearing that. But you were talking about the future and sort of, I mean, I want to sort of ask a very general question about what's sort of next for you. Is La Strada touring? Will people who aren't in London get an opportunity to see it? But it also sounds like you're starting to position yourself into a place where you might be thinking about doing more things like this. So directing projects, directing dancers, coaching dancers. Yeah, what's next for Alina Cojocaru?
Well, nothing is set in stone yet, but I do feel it's a lot of information and lots of things that I've learned in my career that I could share and could have an impact, hopefully, because I feel we can all find a way to have a career that is rewarding and enjoyable and fruitful on any level you are, if you learn how to grow and how to know yourself. I already have in mind one or two other ballets that I would love to produce that will gonna somehow happen, but let's get this one first. And yes, we're in talks, and hopefully La Strada we could confirm some tours that would come up that I'll be very excited about. I think what is interesting right now is one can really think I'm a dancer, I stop dancing, I'll coach or I'll teach. But if one really thinks a little bit bigger, how can I impact? How can I support? How can I help? Through production, through workshops, through mentoring, there is much more if we think like that, I find. And the world changes so fast on the technical part, there are going to be even more opportunities in the future than we had only like 5 years ago. So once I put the question out there, I start seeing the answers, and then I go, would I like to work this way? Would I like to work this way? Would I like this? And then you see more things that could come together to create something that I feel I could contribute.
I think all of us just witness to this conversation can probably say that you've got so much to give everyone. As you're saying, you can sort of make such an impact with the intelligence that you have. So I'm going to turn my attention to the chat and just sort of ask a few questions from there. So I'm going to go scroll right back to the beginning of them. We've got one question about a particular ballet on So I'm interested to hear Alina's thoughts on dancing Tatiana in Onegin. So I know I didn't give us a chance to talk about particular highlights of your career, but here's one thing we can talk about.
Onegin was, interesting enough, out of all the ballets, has a beautiful story because we were down to audition with Johan for Lenski and Olga. And after we did the pas de deux, we were cast to do both. I was cast to do both Olga and Tatiana, and do the opening night of Tatiana. I think I was 21, so I was one of the youngest Tatiana to do that role. And I remember walking in the tubes and looking at people, at ladies that were more senior, to see how they move, how they sit down, how they get up. Because I felt I was so light on my feet that I didn't know how to be more mature. And then, of course, the more research I do, I realized, she's not that much older in the second part, but because of what she experienced in life, she has a weight on her shoulder. So it's not because I'm old that I walk that way, but because the emotional baggage and weight and in the heart and in the body that I have, that makes her mature a lot faster. But what was very lucky for me is working with Reed Anderson, who when we were talking, sorry, can you hear that beep? Or can you hear a beep? No, good. Working with Reed Anderson and mentioning that I feel I'm not mature enough. I feel I'm not mature to do this role. And he said, "You have everything you need for now. Don't try to do who you are now." And he gave such good coaching. And I felt so grateful that he gave me this opportunity on such a young age to experience something that perhaps many dancers experience much later in their career. And the fact that he had the faith and trust, and he said, you're working well. I like what I see, and I took everything on board. And he had faith, and that trust I love, and I just throw myself 100% in the role. But the joy for me was that I had the opportunity to grow in this ballet on stage, and with life and with life experiences, I found her more and more. I did other ballets, then we did Manon, then we come back to it, then I did also start working with John, and then we came back to Onegin. So every time I would come back to it, the things I've learned from other ballets, I found it made my Tatiana a lot more rich and knowledgeable in how to, it's a ballet that I hold very dear to my heart for that trust from Reed and work that we did.
That's so wonderful to hear. I'm going to switch from one Cranko ballet to now asking a question about Romeo and Juliet, particularly Johann's production. And Fiona in the chat said that she felt that it was a love letter to you, but she'd like to know a little bit more about the joint history of the different versions of Romeo and Juliet that you've danced together over your careers.
Yeah, thank you, Fiona. That's a wonderful comment. True, actually. Well, Romeo and Juliet was the first full-length ballet I danced with Johan. Right. So a lot happened during that. Again was another ballet where I had 1 week to learn. One of the dancers got injured, and I had 1 week to learn it. I think I was 20, just 20. And it just connected us. I think when you experience that passion, it just and love, as the story of Romeo and Juliet, it stayed until today. Still today, it's alive, very much alive in my heart. And there are so many different productions. I mean, the Royal Ballet, we have Macmillan, then John Neumeier, then of course then I did Johann, then I did also Morricone, I think, yeah, Massimo Morricone, then not so many, also Lavrovsky at the Mariinsky. There are not so many, but they're also very different.
Yeah.
One are very big and out perform, some are more delicate, one is more clumsy, falling down and be more clumsy until she meets the love and then she blossoms. So there are so many different experiences of Juliet that and then of course working with Johann, it was interesting to see his vision and what he wants to achieve with it and how he wants to bring it to more of a compact and bring the essence of the story, which is the love of Romeo and Juliet. Was fascinating to see how he saw it come to life, really, and be a part of it and wish it well to just yeah.
I'll ask one more question just because I want to be very respectful of your time. And I know we've covered a real sort of wonderful spectrum of your career. But my last question, Tom asks, when you were a young dancer, was there a role you wanted to perform and have yet to do so? No, wow. Oh. It's amazing.
No. I think you see what's very interesting is I pursued my desires. I think I remember when we had Ross Stratton was director and I was cast to do the princess in Meyerling. I was cast to do the wife of
Stephanie.
Yes, Stephanie, exactly. Thank you. I was cast to do Stephanie, and I remember watching it, but I actually went and I said, you know what? Can I please cover Mary? And they said, yes, of course you can go. And then I went to rehearsals, and then I was cast to do it. So I ended up doing it. So I feel every time I felt there was something I really wanted to do. Same working with John. He tried, it didn't happen, and I said, okay, I feel this is something important. I have to make it happen, and then it kind of make it happen. Then now with I love story ballets. I love working with choreographer. So I said, okay, let's make a production where I could work with someone that is it works really really well, and I can create something special. Then here I am with Natalia. So I feel that role that perhaps I dream to do, it's still there, and I'll find it. But for now, I cannot think of something that I haven't. Of course, there are many other Krankos work that I haven't experienced or didn't come my way, or I have. And there's lots of other ballets in the world that I have not had the chance to do, but there isn't one that I feel I'm missing out on.
That I really think that speaks to your inquiring mind and your generosity of spirit, that you just seem to sort of tackle everything as it comes, and I think that's a really wonderful lesson for us as dancers to hear. So, well, for me, it's been such a treat to be able to talk with you and interview you. So thank you so much for asking me. I think we can hand back to Susan, maybe. Hello.
Okay. Hello, Susan.
Hello, I think I'm back. Thank you. That was absolutely fascinating. So many layers to you, Alina, as a dancer, as a woman, and we are so grateful that you have shared with us your innermost thoughts. It's just a real privilege, and I think the character that you're creating, Lila Strada, is going to be absolutely fascinating, and I'm sure the tickets are going to go like mad after this. We'll put the link to the tickets in the chat, and it will also be, I mean, if worst comes to worst, Google Sadler's Wells and you'll get it. Thank you, both of you. Daniel, thank you for asking all the questions that you did and bringing out so many fascinating aspects. I'm sorry we're not live, that the audience isn't here, because the applause you would be receiving is very enthusiastic and very long. But it was just great. If we weren't excited about the Strada before, we certainly are now. And that trailer was a great little tease. So thank you so much. Please, everyone, join us next Tuesday. I know we don't usually have speakers quite so close together, but this is an opportunity not to be missed. Brandon Lawrence will be interviewing Julie Bowers, who's from BBO, Grad Pro, and a trivia point, she was the original Great Auk in David Bentley's Still Life at the Penguin Cafe. So do come along and meet Julie. Again, it's on Zoom, and hear all about that. And on February 14th, our Valentine to you is a conversation with Javier Torres, former principal with Northern Ballet, who is now managing director of the Acosta Foundation. And what Carlos is doing out in Woolwich is very exciting, and Javier is going to be here to tell us all about it. And finally, Casper Lench will be our speaker at the AGM on March 11th. So put all these things in your diary, and we will see you all at them. So once again, Alina, Daniel, a huge thank you from all of us for taking the time to spend with us this evening. I guess it's afternoon for Daniel because he's in Sarasota, where it's warm and sunny. However, we won't hold that against him. Alina, every success with La Strada and whatever else you do in the future. I know it's going to be fantastic. And Daniel, we're all looking forward to seeing you and the company in the Royal Opera House in early June. That's something else to look forward to. And thanks to all of you for tuning in this evening. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you're not a member of LBC, perhaps you'll consider becoming one now and be able to partake in all that we have to offer. And we are a charity. We do our best to help young dancers to become Alina, to follow in her footsteps and take the world by storm. If you would like to make a donation to help us in that, we'd be very grateful. Please visit our website. So that's all for me tonight. Again, Alina, Daniel, and all of you, thank you so very much. We'll see you next week for another In Conversation. So good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.